So, hey, I'm Minna from Supermetrics, and today we're going to talk about how we can utilize our data, both from UA and GA4 for year-on-year reporting. And with me, there's Fouad, if you would like to introduce yourself.
Yes, of course. So, hello, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank you guys for having me. My name is Fouad Mawla. I'm a data analyst at Kemb GmbH, where we basically specialize in implementing marketing analytics BI infrastructures to help companies properly leverage their data for better decision making. We also specialize in implementing web tracking and analytics solutions. We love data. We are very good at what we do. And basically, our main focus is to help companies with how they leverage their data.
That sounds great. And for me, I'm here as a marketeer's perspective. So I'm responsible for our GA4 here at Supermetrics on the marketing side. So I'm really looking forward for this conversation.
Same here.
Yes. When we talk about, in general, year-on-year reporting, why do you think that it's super important?
That's a great question. I think that year-on-year is used or should be used to provide a holistic view of the company's performance and evolution throughout the year. Definitely year-on-year comparisons, they serve as a valuable tool, very valuable tool for strategic decision-making, better data-driven decision-making by analyzing not only numbers, but also trends and patterns over time, seasonalities. And by doing so, businesses can really thrive and take profit from this comparison that they do.
Yeah, I agree on all of the things that you said. Yes, perfectly. Yeah, and also when I think about the year-on reporting, for now, I think we're hitting a good subject here as it's going to be a bit tricky this year. But if you think about web analytics report, what are the things that you might want to add? As a marketeer, I'm of course interested about events and page views and so on, but what are the things that you might want to add to that?
Yeah, sure. So when we compare year on year, obviously we'll get to the comparison in a second between UA and GA4, but mainly we look at patterns in traffic acquisition and user acquisition and user behavior on the website, page views, things that we can objectively quantify and compare between one period and the other. So definitely, as you mentioned, events and conversions are a pillar in comparison and are very important to look at. But again, as mentioned, to look at the comparison holistically, to look at the most objectively comparable metrics like behavior, like acquisition, like getting users on the website. So this visitor behavior can be compared, and I think is one of the most important things to keep an eye on in those comparisons.
Yeah, as I think about a lot of like the top of the funnel things are usually happening on the site. So people come to the site for the first time. So those signals and going through the whole customer journey and pipeline, I think they are super crucial. So yeah, agreed again with all of them. Yes.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, as we both mentioned already, this year or maybe start of next year, it's going to be a bit trickier than usually to do the year on year, especially if you use Google Analytics. So you have to use the Universal, and now everybody's has transformed to GA4. So I don't know, could you maybe highlight a few of the problems or the issues that might come up with the transition?
Absolutely. So as you mentioned, UA is now obsolete. So UA has been deprecated since July, and now you have companies that have moved to GA4 either too late or they were lucky enough and smart and fast enough to set up their GA4 in 2022. But mainly, there is a monumental difference between UA and GA4 that we need to talk about, that the listeners right now need to understand when they want to make a year-on-year comparison. So because things have shifted to a new platform, the data models between the Universal Analytics and GA4 properties is extremely different. And thus, if you want to set up a year-on-year comparison, you have to be extremely careful into looking at the metrics and looking at the two setups of the platforms and making sure that they were set up correctly. So what do I mean by correctly? You have examples, for example, that what companies did was to transition automatically from UA to GA4. And when you do that, unfortunately, because of the reason we just mentioned, you will have discrepancies in your GA4 properties. So because as we know, so sessions are calculated differently between UA and GA4. In UA, you have a lot of factors that can break a session. In GA4, for example, you only have the timeout period that you select. By default, it is 30 minutes. There is a difference in the way users are calculated. So in UA, there was a big focus on total users with comparison to GA4 that focuses on active users. Not only that, but when you set up events and conversions in both the platforms, if you are using both platforms, you know how different they are. So if you automatically migrate, chances are there is some faulty setup in the way those events are set up if we want to mirror them in GA4. So we have to be, or anybody who wants to do the year-on-year comparison needs to make sure that one, obviously, the best year-on-year comparison would be if they had set up GA4 prior in 2022, and in that way they could compare GA4 2022 by GA4 2023, and this obviously makes the most objective comparison. Otherwise, yeah, those factors are very important to look at, because if you have a faulty setup and if the GA4 migration has not been done properly, then the year-on-year comparison will give you, unfortunately, faulty assumptions. And based on that, when you analyze the insights, you might get to a solution or to a point that doesn't serve the business, rather hurts the business because of the data quality that they are working with. So year-on-year comparisons, as we've mentioned, are very important. But what is more important is not to go through all this trouble to create a year-on-year comparison that gives you faulty insights. So that's very important in my opinion. What do you think?
Yeah, and I totally agree. Like, as a marketer, I have been asked already to check some of the year-on-year numbers, and to me, well, of course, for example, the properties are set differently in UA and GA4. So if you have, for example, an app that can be combined to the website in GA4, and in UA, you have two different properties.
100%.
So that's already like a really big difference in the numbers. And yeah, I've been just trying to build things on trends instead of like actual numbers. So I think that has been maybe a key for me, but in general, like comparing the numbers exactly from UA to GA4, it can be also a bit, I would say, dangerous even, because it might look bad. For example, the numbers are worse, but in real life they are not. So then you will make conclusions that will affect the business, but everything is still okay. So,
yeah, very well put. Yeah, definitely. And there's, unfortunately, because not a lot of people actually do understand fundamentally the differences in the metrics and in the dimensions, they think that they could go ahead and do a very quick comparison. So yeah, I'm glad we can today shed some light on this topic, because obviously as we're ending the year now, this year-on-year comparison is a big topic, and is very helpful for businesses. But yeah, when you compare faulty data, you will end up in not so much of a good place, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm happy that we don't have to maybe have this discussion again in January 2025. Then we will be in a better place, but especially for this year-on-year reporting, it's gonna be a tricky one. But of course, that's why we're here, offering some of the solutions.
Exactly.
So yes. So yeah, maybe talking a little bit of solutions that we are covering now. So we will help you understand how to do your year-on-year reporting using the two different data sets, with that in mind that if the setup is somewhat faulty, it might be still that the numbers don't quite match, but then focusing more on the trend side and so on. So let's get started. What do you think?
Sure. Even before we get to the best practices, just 1 second. Also, even if you have just wanted to mention that even if you have a perfect migration between UA and GA4, you will still see differences. The numbers would not match 100%. Never. We have a saying, there's no 100% in data. So yeah, just like you mentioned that with a perfect setup, you still have differences. So when you want to compare, we don't look at numbers, we look at trends, we look at seasonalities, and we look at how, for example, traffic acquisition or user acquisition or user behavior behaves through time and not taking individual points. So to help us with that, we first need a tool that helps us, first of all, take out that data. And that tool, for example, for us at Kemb, one of the tools that we use, prominent tools that we use, is Supermetrics. Because Supermetrics, the benefits, in my opinion, not only that you can connect definitely to multiple different sources, but also the speed with which you can get this data, the ease of the interface that allows people who are not maybe in the technical field or deep in the technical field can really work with Supermetrics rather easily, I would say. So it has definitely been a tool that has helped us condense and really take out and export the data in the way we want it, with the dimensions, metrics, and filters that we precise. So obviously, to start the comparison, this is the focal point and this is the starting point. And just like we mentioned, if the starting point is faulty, the rest is faulty. So yeah, in Kemb, what we do specifically for the year-on-year comparisons or for the UA to GA4 comparisons, we have built a dashboard using Supermetrics that really showcases the differences in the objectively comparable metrics that we discussed, like sessions, users, page views, and channel groupings. And in that way, you can have clean data, you have correct data that is being exported from the API, and you are able to very easily compare and look at the numbers between UA and GA4. So what Supermetrics allowed us to do, and with the help of this dashboard, is not only check if the migration was done correctly, we can choose any time frame and basically have simultaneously a UA to GA4 migration check, and at the same time a year-on-year comparison between the metrics. If you want to, we could immediately dive right into it. I could share my screen and we can discuss a bit further.
Yes, I think while you're doing the sharing, I think coming from my end, of course, I'm a bit biased with the fact that I work at Supermetrics, but I think one of the best benefits of my work is to actually be able to use all of the tools in my work. And I agree that when you don't have to be super technical, you just have to know what you want, and then it's easy to pull off those. And if somebody has built a template ready, I'm eager to see it at least, that how it will help me, because I have done my part with our tools, but I have faith in you that as an analyst, you have brought it to a new level. So I'm really looking forward to see it.
Perfect. So I guess we could jump right in.
Yeah.
And start actually, or check out the dashboard itself. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. Great. So this is a Power BI dashboard that we have built using the Supermetrics connectors, as we said, and we have two columns. Basically, the dashboard speaks for itself. On the left-hand side, we have the Universal Analytics, and on the right-hand side, we have GA4. So first, what I've said, and obviously this is dummy data, there will definitely be a link to the template for the listeners that they could use. Also a documentation on how to set up their Supermetrics will be provided. They only have to connect to their account, and it's a plug and play situation. And we've made it as such because our most important objective is to help clients reach their targets. Great. So if you look at the numbers here, or let's dissect the dashboard. So here, but I've chosen Q1 of 2023 and comparing UA to GA4. So the first comparison that we will do is just a quick migration check to see how sessions and users and other metrics compare. And as we see, we have very okay, relatively very okay numbers. We have less than 10% of difference, which is in the Google Analytics world means that it is properly set up. In the dashboard, you could also see trends between UA and GA4, how sessions and new users are being acquired. In the page views, the cool thing about this dashboard is not only you will see the overall difference, but if you want to select specific page views or page paths, what you can do is select the same one and actually have the difference highlighted for each specific page. So in these tables, what we have done is put the top 20 page paths by page views. So the top 20 most viewed pages that you have, and you could check again the migration by using the page views. And at the end, we did a channel grouping comparison between UA and GA4, also to check what are the channel groupings that are differing and resulting in different numbers. When you have 2.81% difference, in this case, for example, that means that the sessions are being recorded almost the same between UA and GA4. The cool thing now about this dashboard comes with the fact, as we said, that we can do the year-on-year comparison. So let's go back to January 1st in 2022 and compare it to March 2022. And here, for example, this is where we can also start dissecting. So we see that there's not a lot of difference in traffic. However, there has been a little bit more difference in user acquisition, maybe in 2022. Yeah, within that specific quarter, you can analyze it depending on your business. But basically, what this dashboard allows you to do is to conduct this year-on-year comparison with these specific metrics. There's a reason, obviously, why we did not add events or conversions or conversion rates. We already talked about this, that even though they can be comparable, we feel a bit like to be on the safe side. We only include this data in the dashboard if we see a one-to-one mirror of these events and of these conversions between UA and GA4. Only when we see this, then we say, yeah, it makes sense, obviously, to compare the two and to include the two in the dashboard.
Yeah, and I think I'm loving this already. But yeah, I totally agree. Like the most visited pages, that's something that you want to track. Of course, there might be some changes, but they should be relatively the same comparing to the season. The sessions, the channel splits, I think those are the ones that you will get a good sense on what you're doing and how you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you see any drastic changes, then you can of course go back and see how the marketing has been set up, for example, last year and this year, and if there's some differences or if it has been done similarly, is there some changes, for example, in the audience that it doesn't resonate with them anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get a better understanding on the year-on-year performance. But yes, I love this.
And also what we can do is, speaking of marketing efforts, because here on in the last graph we have the traffic acquisition by channel grouping. So not only can we look into the channel itself or the differences in the channels, we can drill down even further to the source medium. So let's say, Mina, you have paid search and you have paid search, let's say on Google and on Bing. So you have two different sources and mediums. Yeah. And this is where also this drill down can help you even further to see which of the sources, Google or let's say Bing, is bringing in either more traffic, more conversions, anything else that we want to analyze. So if I click on referral here and click on referral there, I am inside the session source medium where we could compare again what are the sources that were affected that maybe increased in performance or decreased in performance. So I think also for marketing purposes, since in marketing, in paid ads, in SEA, in PPC, you have different sources, you have different ways that you can get a visitor on the website. So this could also be helpful in the comparison as well.
Definitely it will. Yes, this is looking really good. Yeah. No, I'm thinking like this is built on Power BI, right?
This was done on Power BI, exactly.
Yeah.
So the connector that was used was the Google Sheets. So once and definitely the documentation will be provided as to how to access Supermetrics in Google Sheets. Also, it is extremely easy, which is what you mentioned. One of the best things of working with Supermetrics is the really user-friendly native capabilities and the speed with which we can get the data, import the data to Power BI, and then visualize it. So it definitely is a big source of help for us.
Yeah, and I think so, something similar. So if you're not a Power BI user, this something similar could be maybe built, for example, for Looker Studio, or then of course visualize something in Sheets, of course, as well. But just for the template, I would start using Power BI.
Actually, like what's good is, for example, Data Looker Studio, at some point, the UA properties will be deleted in 2024. So if you are only using Data Looker Studio without, for example, using Supermetrics, Data Looker Studio would not have any data to connect to. In comparison to Supermetrics, where we can already export all the data that we want, have them saved in this Google Sheet, and then we wouldn't have to worry about this problem anymore. That's also one of the benefits of Supermetrics, that to also hurry up and export your historical data, keep your historical data in order to have these comparisons. Because, for example, we have I was working with a client who asked me, can I compare my data before Corona, Q1, for example, before COVID, and Q1 after COVID? And this makes a lot of sense in terms of comparison to see how the market moves, how the market changed. And if I hadn't used Supermetrics, for example, to export all their data, safeguard it, and I wouldn't be able to do that with Data Looker Studio.
Yeah, that is a good point as well. And especially when we go forward, of course, it's important to compare year on year, but sometimes in the world there are different cases that might affect globally or then just your country. And you should be able to find like the normal states of your
absolutely
of your website, and then if there's something else happening, then those are things that might change, but you should know still like the usual levels. So, yeah.
100%, and that's why just as you've mentioned earlier, the focus on numbers, this is a wrong approach to take.
Yeah.
Rather look at holistically how is your website or your business functioning, because of all of these unpredictable variables that we talked about, or the changes in seasonalities, or other factors that might affect the data. But or the most important thing we will remind the listeners is data quality, data quality, data quality. Make sure that this is set up properly, and then through this template or through Supermetrics mainly, you could really go a long way with your year-on-year comparisons.
Yeah, and well, at least for me, this has been super useful, and I hope that everybody who watches the video will experience the same thing.
Hopefully.
But yeah, I think we covered it pretty well, but mainly just I think a few key things to summarize the discussion is that know how your data is built, know that it's correct, don't panic, and look at the trends and not the actual numbers. Anything you would like to add?
Beautifully summarized. I wouldn't add anything to that. I also agree with you. I think we tackled the topic I think correctly, in a nice way. And yeah, I hope the listeners could really benefit from this. And because our main job is to educate and to really lead companies to a better position. And the only way to do that is to really understand what you're doing with your data.
Yeah, and I think you're doing a fantastic job with that one, at least.
Thank you.
For my experience. So I really want to thank you. And as mentioned before, the template will be shared afterwards.
Of course.
So yeah, thank you for 1,000 times. This has been a really nice conversion.
I absolutely enjoyed this conversation. Thank you very much, Mia. Thank you very much to all the Supermetrics team for having me. It's an absolute pleasure. And hopefully we'll do more of those together.
Definitely we will. That's a promise. Cool. Thank you.
All righty.